Well, our collaboration starts about 6 months before we even arrive at TSF. We get the script, we get our assignments, and then we begin researching, following the director's discussion about the production. So we have shared online folders where, like, Sam will put research, and the costume designer and lighting designer will also put in research, and then we'll start our collaborative process.
Yeah, and one of the exciting things about that is when we're collecting that on our own, and then we upload them, and sometimes we see overlap. Like you and I had a lot of that lion imagery for King John.
Actually, yeah, King John, since we're telling a story that has two very large armies and a large cast of characters, and the audience isn't as intimately familiar with who is English and who is French as Shakespeare's audiences would have been, Sam and I need to make sure that we can identify for the audience each of these camps, so that way they understand what the action is happening. And it's about collaborating between colors, also specifically like lions or imagery. I had initially started rendering using a different lion. There are several different English lions. And James pointed out to me that Sam was using a different one, and it was going to be a very large set piece. So that was an easy collaboration to transfer to that lion, so we're telling a consistent story. And then conversely, we started talking about color to make sure we had similar reds, but the actors wouldn't disappear into red tapestries. But there was a cohesiveness in our storytelling.
Well, yeah, for Tartuffe, trying to figure out what material was the backdrop, whether it was like a piece of white material or a piece of black material. I had kind of thought it was going to be one thing. Like, I thought it was just going to be a solid black material because, a lot of the scenery would stand out. But then, Christopher and I started talking about it, and I realized that some of the costumes he's using are going to be, darker colored. So then we had a whole conversation about, like, well, what is going to best show the actors, because they're the storytellers. So, so there's a lot of back and forth and give and take on that kind of stuff.
And I would say in Tartuffe also, I think there's something, particularly in this production, the choice that Sam has made to, in some ways, essentialize the setting. And it's not a realistic interior in many ways. It's not a fully dressed 16th or 17th century room. And so that affected how the clothes would react to the space, so that they're not hyper real in terms of recreating the historical accuracy of the period. It's allowed for some flexibility in how we're interpreting the research and what lens that we've put on, a contemporary eye that we've put into the design. And the same with Love's Labor's Lost, seeing her research of gardens and topiaries and these estates on Long Island in the 1920s, allowed us to explore the tension between someone dressed in in a suit, for example, or a uniform, in contrast to a very floral or garden-like setting, and how those two things start in contrast at the beginning of the play and then move towards harmony in the end of the play.